Hello? Oh, okay. Yeah, it works. Hello?
Testing. I hate my voice on microphone. Thank you.
We're just waiting for, oh, there she is.
Hi, Aaron.
Yeah, just an introduction and then we'll start going.
All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming out. This is the Connecticut for Accessible Psychedelic Medicine panel. So you're going to be able to ask questions at the end. Anything you want to know about the state of Connecticut with psychedelics and what's happening. We're the group that's trying really hard to get some decriminalization going here in Connecticut. So I'm going to start with Vic. He's our fearless leader, and he's going to kind of explain a little bit about CAPM.
Hi, everyone. Oh, hi. My name is Victor Constanza. I'm the lead organizer and founder of CAPM. So the title of this panel is about community and psychedelics, and it's a very meh title because when people think of community, well, at least people who are not really into movement building and building community, people think community is like kumbaya, we're holding hands. Oh, we may have a, pride flag here and that's it, or Black Lives Matter sign there. It's like, no, community is alive. It's an organism. It's like what moves society forward. We are all community, no matter what. But it's important here in the psychedelic aspect. The reason being is because psilocybin, which is what we're focused on this session, is historically an indigenous medicine. It is not what happened was the history behind it is, if you don't know it, the reason why there's psilocybin here in the western side of the world is because there was a lady named Maria Sabina. She was a Mexican indigenous woman. I forgot from what city. But there was a vice president from J.P. Morgan who heard of these magic mushrooms. His name is Robert Wasson, I believe. And he essentially was hearing about these mushrooms and was looking for him. And he goes to Mexico. He meets Maria Sabina. He's also a writer for Life magazine, so really one of the biggest publications at the time. This is like the early 1960s, I believe. No, 57. And Maria was like, please don't write about this. She didn't want this to spread really. It was supposed to be just for that area. It was just for their community. And Robert's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. I won't write about it. Turns out he does write about it. He writes about it in a Life magazine. It got a few pages in, and that's where the explosion of psilocybin happened here in the Western world. Next thing you know, a bunch of white hippies go all the way to Mexico and ruin the community, to the point where the villagers of that community went to Maria Sabina's house, who originally was like, yeah, sure, here, have some of this psilocybin. They burned her house down. So that's one of the instances of why this community is important, because historically, and we all know this, depending on your political spectrum, right? But a lot of this side of the world is colonized, and it destroys communities. We still live it here today in the Americas, when it's not. I mean, the Northeast of the United States, even not with psilocybin. We see it here with cannabis. So the intention here is that historically, some places in the world do ayahuasca. I'm indigenous myself. I'm from the Xinca tribe. We collect information now because the tribe it has been destabilized due to colonization. And You hear it all across Central America and South America that the way they do psychedelics is through community. It's a community medicine. You have to do it with someone, and you see it now. It's like, oh, we need a trip sitter. We need this. We need that. And it's more. It was more of a religious focus. It was to bond with their community. It was to go over challenges in their life. And there's a giant difference in that, because if you haven't taken shrooms, you definitely tell it's different than cannabis. So with, I'm so sorry, I'm blanking out. But with that being said, the cultural context of how these psychedelics were used is through community. So it will be a continuous disrespect to the indigenous cultures who continuously throughout history have, every time a European comes in, it's been with open arms. But with open arms, they receive, deaths of, almost genocidal here in this side of the world. So it is important now, and we've seen it with cannabis already, where it's being controlled by corporations, they closed off, and we are afraid that this will happen with psilocybin yet again. Now, in the organizing aspect, I am a union organizer by trade. So one of the biggest things is that movements only win through community. You can't have one population demographic run the movement. And typically in the psilocybin movement, typically it's white folks of privilege. They have money. But with CAPM, our focus from the start was we wanted everyone to be represented. Here in the steering committee, we have a very, very diverse steering committee, and that's what leads and represents Connecticut. And movements only win through that. Looking at union history, strikes only worked when they brought in folks from other communities that you wouldn't think would be connected to it. For example, like the teacher strike in West Virginia, Chicago, Los Angeles, even the civil rights movement, it had to be intersectional. And we are trying to push the intersectionality here with the psilocybin movement. And without that, we won't reach the goals we're trying to reach. And without that, and some of our partners here are going to talk about it, is that we don't want it to, what happened with the cannabis movement and what cannabis is now, we really don't want that to happen with psilocybin. So yeah, just to give some context on why community is important in these conversations.
All right, so thanks, Vic, for that's kind of some background. So I'm going to continue to pass the mic. I'm going to my friend here, Jason Ortiz, right next to me. He's going to talk a bit about policy and psychedelics.
Sure. So yeah, thank you everyone for coming through. My name is Jason Ortiz. Sorry about that. My name is Jason Ortiz, and I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives for the Last Prisoner Project, and also the Policy Director for CAPM. And I'm getting a bit of feedback over here. And so, so we have been working on the actual policies that are going to go through the Connecticut State Legislature. For some folks that have been paying attention, we had a big forum. I'm going to move because I think I can't hear. Is this any better? Sounds a little better, right? Hello? That does sound better. All right. So we have a decrim bill in Connecticut, just to get to the point. The number is 5297. And so there is going to be a bill that would decriminalize under 14 grams of dried mushroom fruiting bodies. There was a bill that happened last year that I'll talk about a little bit that actually did make it through the House. And so it is possible that this year, this bill could make it through the House again and get approved by the Senate and eventually get to the governor's desk. However, the governor is likely to be opposed to this decriminalization bill. And so off the bat, all of our efforts should go to your local state representatives and senators, but it's really Governor Ned Lamont, who pretends to be a deadhead and goes around with a little Grateful Dead belt on all the time and going to festivals, acting like he supports the community, and is saying he has concerns about this bill. Now, of course, we also have concerns about this bill. It is a very, very minimal decrim bill. It does not decriminalize home cultivation, does not decriminalize sharing and gifting, and it adds all these weird penalties when it comes to your license for young people. And so it is definitely not a fantastic bill, but we do have the ability to amend it at the next judiciary hearing, which unfortunately we don't know exactly when that will be, but that will be sometime in March, and that is when the public can come in and say how we want to amend it. And so the basic overall process for folks that haven't really worked on policy is a legislator will introduce the bill. That bill will then be assigned to a committee, this one being the Judiciary Committee. Then it has to get heard in that committee, voted out of that committee. Then from there, it goes to the floor of the House or the Senate, depending on where it was introduced. It has to get passed by the House, then it has to go to the Senate and get passed by the Senate, and then it has to go to the governor and get passed by the governor. And so we have many more steps in this process to go. But step one, check. We've accomplished that. We have a bill that we can fight for and we can talk about and we can discuss what else we would like to see. At the same time, all these other states are moving forward in their policy measures. Massachusetts is likely to have a ballot measure that is a much more comprehensive legalization structure. We also saw in California recently that they did also pass some decriminalization measures, but Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed the bill in California because it didn't have comprehensive access, so a way to actually purchase psychedelics. So it is pretty likely that the governor is going to take a similar tone and say, without full access and regulated access, we're not going to decriminalize. That means for us in this room, having the conversation of what comprehensive psychedelic reform will look like for Connecticut needs to start happening immediately. And we have to decide what it is that we want to see in that, what is possible, who are our allies, who are our opponents, and get them on record for all these different details. Now, we can, if we want to, say, we're going to do exactly what Massachusetts does. That's a very simple way to propose legislation that's already been vetted by a whole nother state. And that one does include home cultivation and sharing and lots of other kinds of access. And it was actually a 12 by 12 foot space for folks that do want to cultivate their own psychedelic mushrooms. You would have a 12 by 12 space with no height limit, I'll say. There's ways to get around that too. You can go growing shrooms into the sky if you want. But we can say to Governor Ned Lamont, this is going to be the process right across our border. Why don't we just take that entire piece of legislation and start with that as the starting point? And so I do think that is going to be the best strategy for us moving forward, is to just say we want to do what Massachusetts did, but then add our own Connecticut flavor to it, add a little nutmeg on top of it, and see exactly what we can do, right? Like, I would add more restorative justice, personally. We're really talking about expungements, making sure if anyone is in prison that we're actually letting them out, which we didn't do with cannabis, and also focus on probation, parole, because one of the interesting things about psychedelic charges, sometimes there's cannabis and psychedelics on somebody's charge. So if you were to say, we're only going to expunge records for simple cannabis possession or simple psychedelic possession, that person would not be included in either of those buckets because they had both. And so we can add more restorative justice to the bill. But at this point in time, we're reaching out to all of our elected officials, asking them where do they stand on psychedelics. It's a very simple question. Most of them have not actually had to take a position on any of it. And so no matter where you are, you have at least one state rep and a state senator that you can call up and ask them what is their position. We need roughly 75 votes in the House and 17 or 16 in the Senate, and so that's how we can actually get this to move forward. So there is hope, there is a bill, there's a lot of work left to do on the bill, but also there's much bigger conversations we need to have as a community so that we can really figure out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what it is that we want as a community, and then fight for that.
All right, thanks, Jason. I'm going to pass the mic now to Kamora Harrington, community activist extraordinaire, owner of Kamora's Cultural Corner. So she's going to talk.
Hello, beautiful humans. So I am Kamora Harrington. I am the founder and visionary of Kamora's Cultural Corner, where I teach cultural humility from a Black, queer, Afrocentric perspective. And that sounds really cool, but it's an actual real thing. And it's a thing that we need, that I feel we definitely need to use to get to a place of figuring out how equity can address and touch everyone. So when I heard, so when Jason said something about the cannabis bill and how there's equity missing there, I saw a whole lot of heads nodding like this, right? And I'm sure that absolutely everyone in here has their own story and their own reason of thinking and saying that equity isn't working in cannabis here in the state of Connecticut in the way that it definitely should. Here, as we're looking at legalizing and definitely decriminalizing psychedelics, we need to look at it from this place. So as Jason was talking about having more conversations, I'm going to put a quick commercial in. This Thursday night at the Drip House in Hamden, there's going to be a community conversation about this. And when we think about this from a community standpoint, we really need to understand that human beings need to come together and have conversations and talk about the trips that they went on and talk about those beautiful visions and dreams that happened on those trips. And that's what we're looking to decriminalize. That's what we're looking to create. We're looking to create a place where definitely the complex PTSD, the real issues that affect us are addressed. And then also let's get to the beautiful place of imagining a different and new world. And then I don't know who in here has done shrooms, but actually being able to put the pieces together in that space to create that world is a wonderful thing. Another thing that I realize and understand needs to be a part of the conversation that is very much an uncomfortable part of the conversation is as we think about how we use this medicine, as we think about who the practitioners are, and as we think about the human beings who are receiving this. I'm Black American. I don't trust anyone, and I don't trust anyone with my truth. And I've been raised to wear a mask that grins and lies, and I hope some of you caught that and understood what the next line is there, right? But if you're culturally raised to mask yourself and mask your emotions, then the human being who you can receive this amazing, magical, transformative medicine from needs to be someone who has either walked that path with you and your ancestors, or can be so ridiculously over the top respectful that you can receive the medicine and that you can receive the healing. One thing that I think we do far too often, and this is why I'm so very, very, very happy to be here, is this is the United States of America, and anti-Blackness is a thing. And Black folks in medicine and Black folks in healing is a thing that a lot of people are very, very uncomfortable with. And here we go to the crazy hippie piece. As we step into the age of Aquarius and we're supposed to be going to that place of oneness, this medicine can get us there. And we heard what the hippies did in the 60s, those nice white hippies. Their grandchildren are here in front of me today, and I want to do better than your grandparents did. And that means that we can get to the place of oneness if we understand the differences as we respectfully and beautifully step into this. Psychedelics is a wonderful way to do this. I am looking forward to being a part of this. And more than that, I'm looking forward to being a part of and watching and facilitating the weird, strange, uncomfortable conversations between the hippies and the corporate folks and and as we're here in this room, again, those of us who've done psychedelics, those of us who smoke weed, we end up in those ciphers with a whole bunch of people who are different. Those of us who do shrooms, we find the oneness and the difference. And this is what I think this is what I'm here for. And this is what I'm looking forward to being a part of.
All right, and at the very end here, we've got Joseph
I
Raymond
think this one works.
Achitulo.
Thank you, Victor. Hey, my name is Joseph Raymond Achitulo. I'm a co-founder of CT Canna Warriors, president of New England Craft Cannabis Alliance, and a co-founder of High Bazaar. I am here today to talk about why growing and sharing is super important, along with the comprehensive regulatory scheme that Jason speaks of, that we as humans, as people, as residents of Connecticut, no matter what policy goes through, that we ensure the right to grow these beautiful fungus and then have access. And why that is so important is because, I don't think that mushrooms are intended to be in stores in a capitalistic environment. They should really be shared from friend to friend, like Kamara was touching on, like somebody very sensitive and that is going to respectfully bring you into a safe place. We are at a point now where things, as they become popular or information is brought out to the public, corporate entities come sweeping in very quickly. So it's very important to educate yourselves and to really know the benefits that you could find through your friends and learning about these plant medicines through friends, not through commercial, or stores or websites. The best thing is to always learn from a friend, in my personal opinion, and to grow and share. And the other thing I wanted to touch on with CAPM is we're doing a lot of great events. Me and my partner Audrey have a space in Drip House. We're both on the steering committee of CAPM, and we've been coming up with different events to really get people involved and build this community. We've done some Jeopardy events. We're going to be doing some more trivia events. Aaron is doing some great events at the Wholeness House. Make sure you guys stay up with all of that. We have some stuff at Kimura's coming up with her Lifted Labyrinth. These are all community building events, and that's one thing I'm really proud of Connecticut is we have an awesome plant medicine community, and it's like Captain Planet. Like, we all come together from different portions of the state, different portions of the country. Jason's always in DC, and like a lot of us are following him down for a big 420 action day. So, get involved, guys, please. I know there's a lot of money to be made, but there's a lot of real issues to be covered, and to make sure that we're protecting the community, as well as, bringing these things into our daily lives. And thank you guys for all your time. I do appreciate everyone.
All right. So hi, I'm Erin Doolittle, and I'm founder of Wholeness House. There's a booth 323 out there, and we do have some of our events listed. So I'm a therapist, and I believe in entheogenic medicine, essentially, which is substances that bring us closer to the divine, kind of take us up and out of ourselves, and recognize and remind us that we're part of a collective. None of us is really alone. And that we all have the divine inside of us. I think as humans, over the past few years especially, we've become very, very burnt out, worn out, disconnected, exhausted, angry, frustrated, you name it. It's been really frigging hard for everyone. I don't care where you come from or how much money you have or don't have. It's been hard. So people these days are feeling more and more disconnected, more and more depressed. I've been a trauma therapist for 20 years. I utilize several different forms of trauma therapy, but there's really nothing that I can do that's more healing or more helpful to someone than guide them to psilocybin mushrooms, or then, guide them to psychedelic medicine through ketamine clinics and cannabis medicine. We all know the antidepressants and the stuff like that that's available on the market, they don't work. They cause weight gain. They take away your libido. They don't help improve really the quality of life. Therapy is a really hard thing to undergo. It's difficult. It's uncomfortable. It's triggering. And I think it's so, so important to do. But I also think it's important to take a step back sometimes and get back in touch with nature, and get back in touch with indigenous roots, and recognize the fact that we are all just humans, part of nature, part of this planet, part of this universe. And as hippy dippy and crazy as it might sound, using psilocybin mushrooms is pretty much a guaranteed way to get back into that place where you recognize your own divinity, you recognize the divinity of those who are around you, you develop deeper empathy, you're able to have more compassion for other people as well as yourself. We're really, really hard on ourselves. People come to me for therapy, and the people that they're hardest on, the person that they beat up the most, is themselves. So teaching people to get back in touch with nature, that which is our core, that which is greater than our own little, sack of meat we got walking around on the planet here. That's like 10 years of therapy in a day. I can't, I don't like keeping people on my couch for 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years talking about the same things time after time, really not making any change for them, really not healing them on any physiological or neurological level. But we know, because there's been so much research, psilocybin is the most researched naturally occurring psychedelic on the planet. We have so much evidence and research regarding psilocybin. It's mind-blowing, and it's devastating that it's been kept from the public, that psilocybin and MDMA therapies were commonly used prior to the war on drugs. Right. Once the war on drugs came along, therapists such as myself and other therapists, this tool was taken away from us. And we were left looking at people going, well, I guess you could try some Prozac, essentially, and it's been a huge detriment to the mental health community. So I'm fighting, with CAPM and trying to get this tool back in therapist toolboxes, and so that we can reclaim this, because I would love to see my patients feel better faster, improve their quality of life faster, improve their neuroplasticity. I need them to be able to take in new information and change their mind. And that is what neuroplasticity does. And we know that psilocybin mushrooms improve and increase neuroplasticity. So from a therapy perspective, this is probably the most helpful thing I could be doing for my patients right now, is really trying to make it accessible, really, really trying to destigmatize it, and encourage them to try it, because it is a little scary, especially, I'm over 40. I was raised by Dare. We all saw the programs. We all saw the Reefer Madness movies. Like we all think we're going to go crazy and jump out of a window. But when you find out that that's not true, you can access this stuff and you can use it for yourself and make huge changes with a minimum of pain and depression and anxiety. It really sort of cuts through all of that for you. So that's kind of why I'm up here, and I'm so blessed and honored to be working with these folks. So if anybody has any questions or anything like that, raise a hand, give us a shout. If anybody else has anything to add, please.
Because this came up when I was debating with folks that are all about regulated and commercial access. And I just want to make it clear that the way to make psychedelics the most accessible for the most amount of people, the fastest possible, is decrim, right? Decriminalizing it, allowing folks to grow it in your house and allowing folks to share it is the fastest way to get this medicine to the most amount of people who need it the most and build community in the process. Regulated access is not the only way to get access to psilocybin. It is helpful for those that require additional therapy to go to professionals to have that addressed and making sure that they're getting the full range of healing that they possibly can. But as we go through this, there will be politicians that try to scare us and say, we can't trust Erin with growing mushrooms in her house because she might hurt somebody, even though for thousands of years they've been growing in the forest and have been helping people for thousands of years. And so just want to make sure we put that out there, because as folks try to commercialize this, as they have commercialized other medicines, decriminalization is the fastest, most effective, and cheapest way to get access for this medicine to the people.
I want to add to that, just piggyback on what Jason said. So being part of this movement, there's a lot of debates about it's becoming too medicalized, or, it's like, it shouldn't be in the Western medical field. And honestly, those debates ruin the movement, because I believe both should exist. The problem is, once you just leave it to medical professionals, we know that that side is just filled with greed and corporate pharmacists, big pharma, obviously, and we don't want that. However, because of the world we live in right now, a lot of people in this country are westernized. They'll probably trust their medical professional more than, let's say, like one of us that's like, hey, let me trip sit for you. But the thing is, I know that anyone who gets dosed for the first time, it's going to change their life. It is going to drastically give them new perspective, and it gives them, or makes them feel better from whatever ailments that they have, right? So I really in disagreement with folks who are like, we can't talk about or like, let's fight against medical. It's like, no, that's not the way it should be seen. If we know that this is going to help, both have to exist. Decrim, obviously, just like Jason said, is the fastest way to do this, but we're going to live in a world where, well, hopefully both exist with as much equity as possible, because next thing you know, and we're seeing this already in Oregon and in Colorado. Well, Colorado's still developing, even though they've legalized it. But in Oregon, you're seeing psilocybin treatments for $13,000. That's too expensive. You can buy psilocybin for $40, and have one really trusted trip sitter think about your intention and go. And here in Connecticut, we do have some psychedelic integration therapists already. They already exist. They're not allowed to administer, but they're there to process those trips. So if you need that, go for it. So it's just like, we just need to make sure that the movement will not get divided as much as possible. This movement is based on, like I said, community. Like a really good thing is that I keep seeing the psychedelic movement is community is the medicine. It will forever be the medicine. So yeah.
I just want to say one thing, and then definitely Q&A. But I have to say I appreciate my community, because when you start talking about how much mushrooms cost and how it costs $40 for an eighth. I haven't the slightest clue how much mushrooms cost. I appreciate the heck out of my community.
Even the bad trips are good trips in a lot of, in my opinion at least. Those are the eye-opening ones that really teach you the lessons. When you speak of ego death, that's something that, a lot of us look to achieve at times, because that's really what resets your perspective on things. But I try to even look at the bad trips as good trips. And like you were saying, a lot of it has to do with the setting. A lot of times, or what your intentions were. But, you learn, I feel, a lot of things that you weren't intending to learn in a bad trip. So those could be some of the most eye-opening for you. So, but yeah, I would just be there always your setting. The setting is one of the most important things in when you're sharing psychedelics.
And to actually start sharing best practices. Like, one of the things is we have to come out of the shadows. The reason that folks are getting these spaces and don't know exactly what to do is because if you talk about it in 11th grade, you'll get in trouble, right? You won't get a how-to manual. And so CAPM and different organizations that are doing this work, getting out into those communities and talking to schools, right? The reality is folks are taking shrooms right now. Right? So like, legal decrim or not, people are having bad and good trips regardless. And we can either just continue to do what we're doing right now, or we can actually make a particular effort to share best practices with young people, with old people, with everybody in between, right? Because yes, 16-year-olds are doing it, but also 60-year-olds or folks that are coming to the end of their lives are also enjoying psilocybin so that they can process the trauma that they've experienced, but also looking forward. We don't all live forever, and psilocybin has been very helpful with end-of-life care for senior citizens. And so, I do agree, though, that the difficult trips are not necessarily bad, and we shouldn't shy away from things because they're hard, right? Like, I think when it's something really hard, we want to lean into it, but with protection and support as we do it. And that's where the community piece comes in, that regardless of how the government is going to treat the medicine, right? Like, we have to do our job of building the community out so that any young person that says, so how do we do this safely? They know to go to our website or a different website, or their school website has legitimate information on it, right? And so that entire piece of engaging in public education on a small scale, but also in a literal K through 12 and university setting education piece, is something that we have to dig into, because it's the touchy subject of how do we talk to kids about drugs, but it's the most important one to address that exact problem.
Yeah, I think really like the microdosing is a nice way to start the journey, so to speak. That's, a dose that's microdosing, like 0.5 or less of psilocybin, just to see, like, do you get nauseous? How do you feel? It's not going to be enough to actually intoxicate you or give you any type of trip or journey sensation, but it's just going to let you know, is it working? Am I able to metabolize this? How do I feel? How long does it take? And then you kind of like ease your way up, into maybe 1 gram and then maybe 2 grams. And then it's really all about your intention. Like, do you want the big, deep journey? In that case, yeah, you should set up a time and a day, and you have somebody, with you to kind of ground you or talk you through it. Or if you're looking just to sort of treat treatment-resistant depression, PTSD, anxiety, the microdosing, protocols are super, super helpful for people, and they may or may not ever take a shamanic dose. It's really, really what's nice about all the plant and fungi medicine is it's so individualized. It's all about what are you looking for, and how can we help you get it. So that's why having it decriminalized, so we can talk about it openly, so you can reach out and talk to professionals who work with it all the time. That accessibility is step one to success. So I definitely invite you come visit me at the Wholeness House booth after this. I do meditation and psilocybin 101 events where I kind of teach a psilocybin 101 class, and then we do a nice meditation. The next one coming up is March 23rd, and there's massage involved on that one too. So good stuff. That'll be in Hartford. Because it's not really, it's meant to be done in a community. It's meant to be talked about, and questions are supposed to be asked. And, I want to encourage people to ask those questions and, come out to events and things like that, so that we can lead you to what we know to be the legacy community, basically, which is the only way to get it right now, which is very frustrating. But there are definitely avenues and ways to start. So yeah, come visit Wholeness House, or we're right next to the Kaplan booth. We're all in one happy little bubble. The Wholeness House booth is booth 323. It is right next door to the Kaplan booth. So if you see the blue shirts and all of that, come in that direction.
And we're 321, so we're able to remember that. Yes. But I want to take your question and kind of combine it with what you brought in. And I want to remind us that is where the community piece is necessary, where the intergenerational piece is necessary, and definitely the intersectional piece. Because depending on your background and what's happening, you may be being visited by your Orishas. You may be being visited by your ancestors. And if there are folks who understand those journeys, they can share with you what's happening. I tend to get sick to the stomach, so I can tell you that my tea has a whole bunch of ginger in it. And when I talk to people who say they can't deal with the being sick, I can tell you how to use my ginger. I also know that if I eat a dead ant, and I love to eat dead animals, but if I eat a dead animal in a day or two before I do shrooms, it's not going to be the trip that I want to go on. So I leave my dead animals alone and try to stay about as raw as I can the day of, right? But this is where the conversations happen. And this is where the love and community needs to be. Oh, baby, you saw Godzilla and it was scary. Let's talk about it. And let's set up I do tea, but let's set up whatever's going to happen next time so that Godzilla shows up and you know how to deal with Godzilla. Give him tea.
That's all he wants. So psychedelics doesn't have a definition, right? There are lots of different types of drugs and drugs that span the different genres. It is more of a colloquial term, right? And I would include MDMA and THC in the grouping of psychedelics, but ketamine is one that is a bit more, I'm unconvinced that I feel like that is a psychedelic in my mind and in my heart. I've tried it, didn't really like it, but it's just doing a different thing, it feels like, where MDMA is also a bit more on the line, but I feel like in my personal use and the way I've seen the communities operate and talk to each other, MDMA is included in psychedelics. Now, that being said, there's all these other terms that are also used that can get really confusing, and different bills will create new words. There's lots of bills that say psilocybin and MDMA. There are other ones that say natural plant medicine and then include ibogaine, mescaline, and other types, but not MDMA, right? LSD is a pretty classical psychedelic. It is not included, generally speaking, in natural plant medicines, although it does come from natural sources, as do all molecules, right? But there are a lot of terms that are used, some of them actually put into law, that don't have actual specific meaning definitions, and it does get very confusing. The bill we're working on this time in this particular space is psilocybin specifically, but that's because that's what the politicians are going to put in regardless. But, the expansiveness of the term psychedelics is something that the community will have to take, and if there are folks that are particularly passionate about particular psychedelics or believe that something is or is not a psychedelic, we definitely like to hear it. There's all the 2CE, 2CI, various types of other molecules as well that do have psychedelic effects. And I think with drug policy, one of the strange things is there's just an infinite number of molecules that we could be discussing when we talk about drugs and what those things do to our bodies. So these looser terms are there to make things easier to explain to the public generally, but can cause confusion because they are not very specific.
Anybody else?
get exactly what you need.
And that's one of the places where I really love the conversations, right? Because we're Westerners and we want the dopamine and we want to feel good. And we've got this idea that everything we're going to do is going to feel good, missing the fact that, bitter medicine, right? And there are times when those trips where you see the things you don't like and you feel the things you don't like and you've got to confront those things. That's the beautiful medicine that makes us beautiful together. And figuring out how to get there and be comfortable with it. And no, this is not the party glow stick drugs. Sometimes it is, but it can be, but not every time I'm gonna be partying with glow sticks. So sometimes I'm gonna be like dwelling within, and that ego death, those places of going are the beautiful, necessary places.
Where do you live? In Talon County. So you're out in the northwest corner, huh? We're going to have to do a lot of work out there to get those folks on board. But finding out who your state representatives are, right? The first step is knowing who the people are that are representing you and asking them to do stuff, right? Like that's always the first step, because they may say, I'm already on board, or I'm absolutely against this. And depending on what their answer is will determine how you get politically active, right? And so the other piece of it is definitely follow CAPM on Instagram and social media, because we have tons of events coming up. And the next thing that is definitely something to prepare for is the judiciary hearing on the decrim bill. You'll be given 2 minutes to speak however you want to speak to the state legislature about your support for the decrim bill or not. And that is coming up in a month. So preparing your testimony now, your personal story, how you want to express your support or disapproval is definitely going to be happening in the very near future. And you don't really need to do anything. You just need to show up and, tell them how you feel about it.
Are you available Thursday?
Yeah, that's our testimony class.
Are you available Thursday? So Thursday we're having a testimony writing workshop in here. We're going to be we doing the community meeting and a test. So we're going to be doing a community meeting for CAPM on Thursday and a testimony writing workshop in Hamden, and I believe that's at 7 p.m. I give you the address and stuff when we're done.
You signed the petition earlier, so you'll get an email about it. But at the same time, one of the aspects that we focus on is like we want events as many places in Connecticut as possible. We've had them in Stamford. I believe there's another one in Stamford this next Saturday. We've had them in Hamden and in Hartford. So, get in contact with us and we can help make an event in Tolland. It would involve a little bit of research on. We have to find some sort of community leader that can bring an audience from that area. It could be 10 people. That's more than enough to have some sort of conversations, because these conversations start with a few people. Like any movement building always starts with a few people. Like even CAPM, it started with an Instagram post and it just led to to the next thing. So it really is just, we would help you out and advertise and find those folks to make those events.
And I'll just tell a quick funny story about that post, actually, because like how CAPM started was because I saw Victor post, why isn't anybody organizing on shrooms? What's going on? I'm going to do it. And I was like, yo, fam, there are people organizing on shrooms. We should get together and make a group. And then that became Connecticut for Accessible Psychedelic Medicine. So you never know. If you post, hey, who in Talon County cares about psychedelic medicine? Somebody may answer that post and say, I do. And I live right down the road. Let's, do something at the library. So put out the bat signal, folks will answer, and then you'll find your people.
Is it like, so is the experience different between microdose and macrodose, or? The outcome after? Yeah, the microdosing is kind of more gradual. You'll because you're not going to feel intensely, what's happening. But you will notice over the course of days, weeks, and months that you have more patience, you have more empathy, you have more compassion for yourself and for other people. Your depression tends to be lighter, more lifted. You have a little more energy, a little more motivation, a little more focus. And you're going to notice those things, and you're going to have to really pay attention and notice those things and journal those things and be mindful about everything that's going on, scanning your body, scanning your mind on a regular basis to see what's going on. I microdosed this morning. How am I feeling? And really just checking in with yourself a ton. Long term, the effects are very positive overall, because those folks, the people that are microdosing successfully, they're not having to take Zoloft. They're not having to take sleep medicine. They're not having to take anti-anxiety medicine. Like they're just generally, able to feel lighter and more comfortable in their day-to-day life. But that takes time. The macro dose is like 10 years of therapy in about 3 or 4 hours. So you're going to get a lot of information. You're going to get a lot of emotion, a lot of input, a lot of perceptions, insights that are going to come up, and they may come up really, really fast. So that's why we tell people, like, have a guide, have somebody there who's going to like ground you and take notes for you, because you need to remember what the heck is going on later so that you can actually integrate it into your life. And that the journey itself that day, those hours are going to be incredible. And you're going to be like, oh my God, holy shit, that was amazing. But the really important work happens after. You have to integrate, over time. So does that help? Does that make sense?
So to add to that as well, and I've used this analogy with some folks who've never used it. It's not like with cannabis where you smoke a joint or your blunt and you're like, oh, this shit's hitting right now, right? With a microdose, you just feel kind of like an elevated version of the mood you are already having, or just makes you feel better. It helps you feel more creative. For myself, it makes me feel more confident and way more focused. Just from my own personal experience, I suffered from alcohol use disorder. It was really bad with alcohol. I also have PTSD and borderline personality disorder. So I have the whole thing. And I was at the point of a huge relapse. So going back to constantly drinking all the time. And I was also suicidal. So I took the macro dose. It's intense compared to that, taking 0.5. I remember one part of my trip was I lost total complete self of who I was, but also the trip sitter, I didn't even know that was my trip sitter. It was like, who are you? He's like, who? It's like, are you my caretaker? I was like, not like, and I did it at my house. I didn't even know where I lived, and literally they took me on a walk, like 2 minutes out, and I'm like, dude, where am I? So it's just very there is a giant difference. But I recommend what Aaron said, start with that microdose and see how it feels. And then the more and more up you go, for example, like if you're gonna take 3 grams, it also depends on your body composition, but if you're taking 3 grams, you're staying home all day. 0.5, you can go to work, so.
All right, I think that's all we've got time for. So thanks, you guys. Come visit us, booth 321 and 323. We've got petitions. We've got more information available. You can ask questions. We're here all weekend. So thanks so much, guys.